This is Math 6100, 23rd 7th trimestral, and our lessons for today is all about properties of limits. So what is our objectives, no? Properties of limits. This section presents results which make it easier to calculate limits of combinations of functions, or to show that a limit does not exist. The main result says we can determine the limit of elementary combinations of functions by calculating the limit of each function separately and recombining these results for our final answer. The mean limit theorem says we get the same result if we first perform the algebra and then take the limit, or if you take the limits first and then perform the algebra. So the limit of the sum equals the sum of the limits. A proof of the mean limit theorem is not inherently difficult, but it requires a more precise definition of the limit concept that we have given, and it then involves a number of technical difficulties. So last week we have discussed the three methods of we discussed the limits of functions, no? And we discussed the three methods of determining the limits of functions. First, we have the algebra method. Okay, we still remember that one. We have also used during the discussion in limits and continuity. Second, we have the graph method. And the last one, we have the table method. So those are the three methods in determining the limits of the functions. But kahit alin po sa tatlo ang gagamitin mo, you are going to arrive at the same answer. So dito, itutuloy pa rin natin yung algebra method and at the same time yung graph method. Okay? So we have here the mean limit theorem. If the limit the function of x as x approaches to a is equal to L, and limit g, which is a function of x as x approaches to a, is equal to m. So by this time, we have two functions, no? Functions ng L, and then functions limit of L and the limit of m. Not just in our previous discussions, we have only one limit, looking for one limit. By this time, we have two limits, no? So the limit the function of x plus g of x as x approaches to a. So parang ganito po siya doon sa theorem po natin, okay? We're going to distribute the limit the function of x as x approaches to a plus the limit g, which is a function of x as x approaches to a, is equal to the limit of your L plus the limit of your m. Okay? Next, we have the subtraction. The limit the function of x minus g of x as x approaches to a, we are going to use the distributive property. Pareho pa rin siya. Function of x as x approaches to a minus limit g is a function of x as x approaches to a is equal to L minus m. Okay? So next, we have the limit k multiplied by the function of x as x approaches to a, where your k is constant. So the limit the function of x as x approaches to a is equal to kl. Constant multiplied by your L. The limit the function of x multiplied by g sub x as x approaches to a. So we're going to make use of the multiplication rule. Okay? So we have here the multiplication rule. Ganun din po, i-distribute po natin. So we have L multiplied by M. Okay? So next, we have the quotient rule. The limit the function of x divided by g is a function of x as x approaches to a. So we're going to make use of the quotient rule, L all over M, provided that the limit of the denominator is not equal to 0. So the same procedure, we're going to make use of, if our quotient or denominator is 0, then we're going to find their common factor. Okay? So next, we have here the exponent. The limit the function of x raised to n as x approaches to a is equal to L raised to n. Okay? For the last one, the limit the function of x, the n root of the function of the function of x as x approaches to a is equal to the n root of your limit L if L is greater than 0 when n is an even number. So ito yung mga theorems of limits mo natin. Although they're the same with our rules of limits. Parang pareho lang po siya, no? Okay? So we have your practice one. For the function of x is equal to x squared minus x minus 6 and g sub x equal to x squared minus 2x minus 3, evaluate the following limits. Letter A, the limit of the function of x plus g sub x as x approaches to 1. Letter B, the limit of the function of x multiplied by g sub x as x approaches to 1. Letter C, the limit the function of x divided by g sub x as x approaches to 1. Letter D, the limit the function of x plus g sub x as x approaches to 3. Letter E, limit of the function of x multiplied by g sub x as x approaches to 3. F, limit the function of x divided by g sub x as x approaches to 3. Letter G, the limit the function of x raised to 3 as x approaches to 2. And last, the limit of the square root of 1 minus g, which is a function of x, as x approaches to 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8. So these are our 8 example po. So what we're going to do, we're going to follow yung mga theorems of limits in solving this example. Okay? So this is your first limit, no? The function of x equal to x squared minus x minus 6. G sub x is equal to x squared minus 2x minus 3. So letter A, we're going to find the limit of the function of x plus g sub x as x approaches to 1. Okay? So that's our letter A. So we have our solution. So the function of x is equal to x squared minus x minus 6 as x approaches to 1. Okay? So by this time, we are going to use the algebra method. So our limit is 1. So we have 1 squared minus 1 minus 6. Ilan po yung sagot natin? 1 squared is 1, minus 1 is 0, minus 6, the answer is negative 6 po. Okay? Next, g sub x is equal to x squared minus 2x minus 3 as x approaches to 1. 1 squared minus 2 multiplied by 1 minus 3. Okay? So 1 squared is 1, minus 1 is negative 2. 1 minus negative 2 is negative 1 minus 3. We have negative 4 po. Okay? So therefore, okay? So if you're going to look for the limit, the function of x plus g, which is the function of x, as x approaches to 1 is equal to, okay, ilan yung sagot nito? The function of x as x approaches to 1, we have negative 6. Yung g sub x as x approaches to 1, the answer is negative 4. So simplified further, minus 6 minus 4, the answer is negative 10. Okay? Okay, so next we're going to proceed with your letter B. So by this time we have multiplications, no? Limit the function of x multiply g sub x as x approaches to 1. So kanina, alam po na natin yung the function of x natin as x approaches to 1, our answer is negative 6. Ito yun, kanina, no? Next, g which is a function of x as x approaches to 1, our answer is negative 4. Ito yun kanina, no? Okay? So if we're going to multiply, limit the function of x multiplied by g which is a function of x as x approaches to 1 is equal to negative 6 multiplied by negative 4, the answer is positive 24. Okay? Next, we have letter C, no? So by this time, we have division. Okay? So in our division, okay, the function of x as x approaches to 1, our answer kanina is negative 6, no? Next, g is a function of x as x approaches to 1, our answer is negative 4. So by this time, we are going to divide limit of f is a function of x divided by g which is a function of x as x approaches to 1 is equal to negative 6 all over negative 4. The answer is, we have 3 all over 2, or that's the same as 1.5. Okay? Any questions po?
Kahit factor o kaya decimal parts ng answer, sir.
Oh, wala namang problema po doon, no? 3 all over 2 or 1 over 5, okay lang po siya. Okay?
Thank you po.
Next, we have letter D, no? Limit the function of x plus g sub x as x approaches to 3. So by this time, iba yung limit natin. Kasi 3 na. Dito ulit nung una is 1. So we have the function of x as x approaches to 3. So what is our equation kanina? We have, check natin yung equation natin kanina. We have x squared minus x minus 6. Tapos yung sa kanina, g sub x as x approaches to 3, we have x squared minus 2x minus 3. So ito po yung functions po natin. Okay, if we're going to substitute, we have 3 squared minus 3 minus 6. So if we're going to substitute that, simplify, 3 squared is 9 minus 3 is 6 minus 6, the answer is 0. Okay? For the other one, g sub x equal to 3 squared minus 2 multiplied by 3 minus 3 is equal to 3 squared is 9. 2 times 3 is 6. So 9 minus 6
0.
is 3 minus 3. The answer is 0. So therefore, we have the limit, the function of x plus g is the function of x as x approaches to 3 is equal to 0 plus 0. The answer is 0 po. Okay? Okay. Next, we have letter E. We have multiplication, no? So under your multiplication, we have, okay, yung function of x natin kanina, as x approaches to 3, our answer is 0. Tapos yung g sub x, as x approaches to 3, our answer is 0 din po siya. Okay, kanina, no? So therefore, we're going to multiply limit the function of x multiplied by g, which is a function of x, as x approaches to 3 is equal to 0 multiplied by 0. The answer is 0 po. For letter F, so pareho pa rin, function of x as x approaches to 3 is equal to 0. G of x as x approaches to 3, the answer is 0. So if we're going to divide, limit the function of x divided by g is a function of x as x approaches to 3. So we have 0 all over 0. What is our answer? 0 divided by 0. So we have
0 po.
or we have undefined. Okay? So that's our answer po. Next, we have exponent, no? Ito yung kanina. Limit the function of x raised to 3 as x approaches to 2 naman ngayon. So, ano yung function of x kanina natin is equal to, okay, wala akong kopya na. Function of x natin, we have x squared minus x minus 6. isulat ko na rin dito, no? G sub x equal to x squared minus 2x minus 3. Okay? So, for letter G, you're going to use the theorems on exponent. Okay? So, as x approaches to 2 muna tayo. If we're going to make use of the algebra method, so we have 2 squared minus 2 minus 6. So, we have, okay, 2 squared is 4, minus 2 is 2, minus 6, we have negative 4 po siya. Nasundan po natin. 2 squared is 4, minus 2 is 2, 2 minus 6, we have negative 4 po siya. Okay? So, therefore, the limit, the function of x raised to 3 as x approaches to 2 is equal to negative 4 raised to 3. What is our answer? Negative 4 raised to 3. So, which means you're going to multiply 3 times.
Negative 64 po.
We have negative 64. Okay? Next, for the last one, the limit of the square root of 1 minus g sub x as x approaches to ngayon. So, as x approaches to 2, this is our function. So, we have 2 squared minus 2 multiplied by 2 minus 3. So, we have 4 minus 4, 4 minus 4, 0. So, we have negative 3 po siya. Okay? So, therefore, limit the square root of 1 minus g sub x as x approaches to 2 is equal to the square root of 1 minus negative 3 po. Okay? So, simplified further, that is the same as 1 minus 3 or 1 plus 3. Minus minus, magiging plus po siya. Square root of 4, the answer is 2 po. So, madali lang po siya, no? So, these are our answers na po, no? Okay. Okay na. Next, we have your D, the AC, two AC limits, no? Limit K as x approaches to a is equal to K din po, no? Limit x as x approaches to a is equal to a. So, we have now the substitution theorem for polynomial and rational functions. If p of x and q of x are polynomial and a is any number, limit p of x is equal to p of a as x approaches to a, and limit p of x divided by q of x as x approaches to a is equal to p of a all over q of a if q of a is not equal to 0. So dito, the substitution theorem says that it can calculate the limits of polynomial and rational functions by substituting as long as the substitution does not result in division by 0. So tulad po yung ginagawa po natin doon sa algebra method. Okay? So, So we have your practice 2. Okay? So I'm going to give you 5 minutes po using the algebra method. Ano po yung magiging sagot po natin? Okay? We're going to check your answers. Okay? So we're going to solve now, no? For letter A, nakita po yung screen ko, no? Nakikita yung screen ko, no? So letter A, we have 5x cubed minus x squared plus 3. You have your limit as x approaches to 2, no? Okay? So we have 5 multiplied by 2 raised to 3, 2 squared plus 3. 2 raised to 3, we have 8 times 5, we have 40. 2 squared is 4 plus 3. So 40 minus 4, 36 plus 3, the answer is 39 po. Okay? Next, for letter B, we have x cubed minus 7x. divided by x squared plus 3x as x approaches to 2. Okay? So we have 2 raised to 3 minus 7 multiplied by 2 divided by 2 squared plus 3 multiplied by 2. Okay? So we have 2 raised to 3, we have 8. 7 minus 2, we have 14 all over 4 plus 6, we have negative 6 all over 10. The answer is negative 3 all over 5. Okay? Any questions po for letter B? Okay, no? So, okay na tayo sa letter A saka letter B. Next, for letter C naman po tayo, no? For letter C, we have limit x squared minus 2x divided by x squared minus x minus 2 as x approaches to 2. Okay? So, if we're going to substitute our limit sa denominator, our answer is 0, no? 2 squared is 4 minus 2, the answer is 0. So, ang gagawin po natin siya dito is we're going to factor. Ang common factor nila, since we have x approaches to 2, we have x minus 2 and then x minus 2. Okay? Sa taas, ang common factor na isa, ang second factor, we have x. X by x squared, x by 2, negative 2x. Sa baba, negative 2 divided by negative 2, the other factor is x plus 1. So therefore, x minus 2, we're going to cancel. What's left will be x all over x plus 1 as x approaches to 2, 2 all over 2 plus 1, the answer is 2/3. Okay? Okay? Next, limits of other combinations of functions. Okay, wala nang tanong. Okay? So, this is our last topic for today, no? So, limits of other combinations of functions. So far, we have concentrated on limits of a single functions and elementary combinations of functions. If you are working with limits of other combinations or composition of functions, the situation is slightly more difficult, but sometimes these more complicated limits have useful geometric interpretations. So by this time, we are going to use now the graphing method. Okay, example 1. Use the function defined by graph in figure 1 to evaluate, letter A, the limit of 3 plus the function of x as x approaches to 1. Letter B, the limit of the function of 2 plus x as x approaches to 1. Letter C, the limit of the function of 3 minus x as x approaches to 0. Letter D, the limit of the function of x plus 1 minus f of x as x approaches to 2. So, tapos na tayo sa algebra method. By this time, graphing method po tayo. So, wala tayong problem solving na gagawin. What you're going to do, you're going to look on the graph on our figure 1 para makuha natin yung sagot ng A, B, C, and D po. Okay? Next, solution. So, letter A, the limit of the 3 plus the function of x as x approaches to 1 is a straightforward application of part A of the mean limit theorem. So dito, this is our figure 1, this is our function. Okay? So ito na yung solution natin, ito yung sagot natin sa letter A. The limit of the quantity 3 plus the function of x as x approaches to 1 is equal to limit 3 as x approaches to 1. So again, we're going to use the distributive property pa rin. Kaya sabi dito, limit theorem. So next, plus. Okay, so this one is constant, no? Yung pangalawa, meron tayong function. The function of x as x approaches to 1. So saan po natin kukunin yan? Kukunin natin yung value niya doon sa graph po natin. So tulad po yung sinabi ko, paano magkuha ng limit using the graph. So tingnan po natin yung value ng x and y coordinates, no? And then kung sasama yung, kung saan tatama yung limits natin dun sa given function. Okay? Function of x as x approaches to 1. So this is now your x and y axis. Yung kulay blue, that is our function. As x approaches to 1, project it upward and then project it to the left. So therefore, your limit is equal to 2. So doon po nakuha yung 2 na sagot. So our answer for letter A, 3 plus 2 is equal to 5. Okay? Next, we have letter B ngayon. We first need to examine what happens to the quantity 2 plus x as x approaches to 1. Before we can consider the limit the function f is equal to 2 plus x, when x is very close to 1, the value of 2 plus x is very close to 3. So the limit the function of 2 plus x as x approaches to 1 is equivalent to the limit of fw as w approaches to 3. So w is equal to 2 plus x, and it is clear from the graph that the limit the function of w as x approaches to 3 is equal to 1. And also, the limit, the function of 2 plus x as x approaches to 1 is the same as the limit, the function of w as x approaches to 3, which is equal to 1, which represents 2 plus x. Okay? So ito ngayon, gagamitin natin ito yung letter B natin, no? Pagtitingnan po natin, ito yung letter B po natin, 2 plus x, the function of 2 plus x. Okay? So, pag substitute natin yung 2 plus x, 2 plus 1. Since our limit is approaches 1. So, 2 plus 1 is equal to 3. Ito na yon. So, yung limit po natin na 2 plus 1 is equal to 3 is the same as the function of w as w approaches to 3. So therefore, 2 plus 1 is 3. Ito na yon. So by this time, we have your limit, which is the function of w as w approaches to 3. Project it upward. Yun na siya. And then project it to the left. Your limit is equal to 1. Okay? Okay. So madali lang ha. Doon po siya nakuha, no? Yung 2 plus x is 1. So therefore, yung function ng w na is equal to 3, yan yung magiging limit na natin. Ito na yon. The limit of function of w as x approaches to 3 is equal to 1 is the same as 2 plus x. Kasi yung x dito, if we're going to substitute that one, we have 1. So 2 plus 1, we have 3. So pag titignan natin yung 3, as x approaches to 3, yun na siya, project it to the left, our answer is 1 po. Okay. So tapos na tayo sa letter B. Next, sabi dito, in most cases, it's not necessary to formally substitute a new variable with w for the quantity 2 plus x, but it's still necessary to think about what happens to the quantity 2 plus x as x approaches to 1. Okay? So next, we have letter C. As x approaches to 0, the quantity 3 minus x will approach 3, so we want to know what happened to the values of the function when the variable is approaching 3, limit the function of 3 minus x as x approaches to 0 is equal to 1. Ito na siya, no? Ito yung letter C po natin. The limit the function of 3 minus x as x approaches 0. So if we're going to substitute dito, 3 minus 0 is 3 pa rin siya. So if we're going to look on our figure, the function of 3, okay, yun na siya, project it to the left, the answer is 1 po. Okay? Okay, for the last one, the limit the quantity function of x plus 1 minus f of x as x approaches to 2, so distributive property pa rin. The limit the function of x plus 1 as x approaches to 2 minus limit the function of x as x approaches to 2. So pag titingnan po natin, okay, yung the limit of the function of x plus 1 as x approaches to 2, so 2 plus 1 is 3 po siya, di ba? Yung sagot po natin. So ito na yung naging sagot po niya. The limit the function w is equal to x approaches to 3. So saan nakuha yung 3? 2 plus 1. So substitute na natin dito, we have 3. Tapos the limit the function of x is equal to as x approaches to 2. So titingnan po natin yung limit itong dalawa, saan nakuha yung 1 minus 3. Okay? The limit the function of the w, okay, ito na siya, we have 1. Okay? As w approaches to 3 is 1. Ito na yon. The limit the function of x as x approaches to 2, ito yung 2 natin, okay, upward, then project it to the left, the answer is 3. So we have 1 minus 3, so your answer for letter D is equal to negative 2. Okay? So again, for 5 minutes, we have your practice 3. Okay? Use the function defined by the graph in figure 2 to evaluate the function of 2x as x approaches to 1. B, the limit the function of x minus 1 as x minus 2, x approaches to 2. Letter C, the limit of 3 multiplied by the function of 4 plus x as x approaches to 0. Letter D, the limit the function of 3x minus 2 as x approaches to 2. Okay? So wala kayong gagawin na isosolve, no? What you're going to do, you're going to look on the figure, tapos tignan lang po natin kung ano magiging sagot po natin. So tulad po na ginawa natin last week, using the graph method, we can find their limit. So by this time, iba yung approach naman yung mga given na function. Okay? So for number 1, the limit the function of 2x as x approaches to 1. Okay? So, at least 90% ata. Tama yung mga sagot po natin. Okay? So, by look at your figure to this your x and y axis, tapos yung kulay pula, it represents your function, yung graph po natin. Okay? Okay, maghahabol si Sir Chiba, letter, no? So, ito ba yung sagot po natin, no? Kay Mr. Matthew, 0, 2, 3, and 1. Okay? Kay Ms. Roxanne, 2 and 1. Kay Mr. Chiba, 2, 1, negative 3. Tapos yung C niya is 1, no? Okay? From Eunice, 1, 0, 12, and 4. Garcia, 1 and 3. Okay, so these are your answers, no? The limit the function of 2x as x approaches to 1. So 2 multiplied by 1. So 2 times 1, the answer is 2. Okay? So as x approaches to 2, ito na siya. Okay? Ito yung 2 natin. Tumama po siya dito. Project it to the left. The answer for letter A is 0 po siya. Okay? Nasundan po natin. 2 times 1 is 2. Okay? So the function of w, which is equivalent to 2, as x approaches to 2, project it to the left, the answer is 0 po. So letter A po natin, our answer is 0, no? 0 po siya, no? Any questions po?
Wala na, sir.
Next, letter B. The limit of the function of x minus 1 as x approaches to 2. So 2 minus 1. The answer is 1. So as x approaches to 1, ito na siya, no? Project it upward, and then project it to the left. Okay? So for letter B, the answer is 2. Okay? So 0, and then 2. Next, for letter C. The limit of 3 is constant. Multiply by the function of 4 plus x as x approaches to 0. Okay? 4 plus x, so 4 plus 0 is 0. The function of w as w approaches to 4, ito siya. Ito yung 4 natin. Project it to the left, we have 1. So, ang sagot natin dito, yung function ng 4 plus x is equal to 1. Ito yun, no? 4 Upward, dito siya tumama. Project it to the left. The answer is 1. So 3 times 1, the answer for letter C is 3 po. Okay? For the last one, the limit of the function of 3x minus 2 as x approaches to 2. So 3 times 2, we have 6 minus 2 is 4. As w approaches to 4, project it upward, project it to the left, the answer is 1 po. So your answers for letter A, 0. For letter B is 2. For letter C is 3. For letter D is 1.